existence, growth, transformation, dwindling, and then death. The material body, which is obtained by spirit soul, under different circumstances, undergoes similar changes. However, there are no such changes for the spirit soul. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This is a very important verse in understanding the difference between the spirit soul and the material body. The soul is eternal, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2:20. Najayate mriyate vakatachin, nayam bhutva bhavita vanabhuya, ajo nitya sasvatam yo yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sarire. For the soul, there is never birth nor death, nor, having once been, does not ever cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. The spirit soul is eternal, being freed from the waste and change, which take place because of the material body. The example of a tree and its fruits and flowers is very simple and clear. A tree stands for many, many years, but with the seasonal changes, its fruits and flowers undergo 6 transformations. The foolish theory of modern chemists that life can be produced by chemical interactions cannot be accepted as truth. The birth of a human being's material body takes place due to a mixture of the ovum and semen. By the history of birth, but the history of birth is that although the ovum and semen mix together after sex, there is not always pregnancy. Unless the soul enters the mixture, there is no possibility of pregnancy. But when the soul takes shelter of the mixture, the body takes birth, exists, grows, transforms, and dwindles, and ultimately it is vanquished. The fruits and flowers of a tree seasonally come and go, but the tree continues to stand. Similarly, the transmigrating soul accepts various bodies which undergo 6 transformations, but the soul remains permanently the same. Ajo nitya sasvato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sarire. The soul is eternal and ever existing, but the bodies accepted by the soul are changing. There are 2 kinds of soul: the supreme soul, meaning the personality of Godhead, and the individual soul, the living entity. As various bodily changes take place in the individual soul, different millenniums of creation take place in the supreme soul. In this regard, Madhvacharya says, Sadvikara sari rasya na vishnas tad katasya cha tad adhin nam sariram cha yatva tan mama atam yajat. Since the body is the external feature of the soul is not dependent on the body. Rather, the body is dependent on the soul. One who understands this truth should not be very much anxious about the maintenance of his body. There is no possibility of maintaining the body permanently or eternally. Antavanta ime deha nityasyokta sarirana. This is the statement of Bhagavad Gita 2.18. The material body is antavat, perishable, but the soul within the body is eternal. Nityasyokta sarirana. Lord Vishnu and the individual souls who are part and parcel of him, are both eternal. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. Lord Vishnu is the chief living being, whereas the individual living entities are parts of Lord Vishnu. All the various grades of bodies, from the gigantic universal body to the small body of an ant, are perishable, but the supersoul and the soul, being equal in quality, both exist eternally. This is further explained in the next verses, text 19 and 20. Okay, here's a notes. So let me read the notes. Without the shelter of the spirit soul, the material body cannot exist. As already explained, the fruits and flowers of tree of the fruits and flowers of tree take birth, exist, grow, transform, dwindle, and die according to seasonal changes. But the tree, through all these changes, remains the same. Similarly, the Atma is free from all changes. One does not need to make the soul prominent, it is automatically prominent. One can very easily understand that in the living body there is a spiritual soul. Okay. Atma refers to the Supreme Lord or the living entities. Both of them are spiritual, free from birth and death, free from the deterioration and free from material contamination. They are individual. They are the knowers of the external body, and they are the foundation or shelter of everything. They are free from material change. They are self illuminated. They are the cause of all causes, and they are all pervading. They have nothing to do with the material body, and therefore they are always uncovered. With these transcendental qualities, one who is actually learned must give up the illusory conception of life, in which one thinks, I am this material body, and everything in relationship with this body is mine. Okay. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita 15.7, Lord Krishna clearly says, Amaivam so jivaloke jivabhuta. All the living entities are part of me. Therefore, the living entities are qualitatively the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the leader, the supreme among all the living entities. In the Vedas, it is said, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The Lord is the chief individual living entity, the leader of the subordinate living entities. Because the living entities are parts or samples of God, their qualities are not different from those of the Supreme Lord. The living entities have the same qualities as the Lord, just as a drop of seawater is composed of the same chemicals as the great sea itself. Thus, there is oneness in quality, but a difference in quantity. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by understanding the sample, the living entity, because all the qualities of God exist in minute quantity in the living entities. There is oneness, but God is great, whereas the living entities are extremely small. Anor Aniyan Mahato Mahiyan, Kata Upanishad 1.2.20. The living entities are smaller than the atom, but God is greater than the greatest. Second, our conception of greatness may be represented by the sky because we think of the sky as being unlimitedly big, but God is bigger than the sky. Similarly, we have knowledge that the living entities are smaller than atoms, being 1/10,000th of the size of the tip of a hair. Yet the quality of being the supreme cause of all causes exists in the living entity, as well as in the supreme personality of Godhead. Indeed, it is due to the presence of the living entity that the body exists and bodily changes take place. Similarly, it is because the Supreme Lord is within the universe that the changes dictated by the uh, material laws occur. The word eka means individual, is significant. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Matstani Sarvabhutani Na Chaham Tesu Avastita. Everything material and spiritual, including earth, water, air, fire, sky, and the living entities, exists on the platform of spirit soul. Although everything is an emanation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should not think that the Supreme Lord is dependent upon anything else. Both God and the living entity are fully conscious. As living entities, we are conscious of our bodily existence. Similarly, the Lord is conscious of the gigantic cosmic manifestation. This is confirmed in the Vedas. Yasmin Yo Prithvi Chan Tariksham Vijnataram Adhikena Vijay Yad Ekam Evad Vit Ityam Atma Jyoti Samrad Ihovacha Sa Imam Lokam Asrija Satyam Gyanam Anantam Asango Hi Ayam Purusha Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Okay. Um, all these Vedic injunctions prove that both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the minute soul are individual. One is great and the other is small, but both of them are the cause of all causes. The corporally limited and the universally unlimited. We should always remember that although we are equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality, we are never equal to him in quantity. Persons with a small fund of intelligence, finding themselves equal in quality with God, foolishly think that they are equal in quantity also. Their intelligence is called avisuddha buddhaya, unpolished or contaminated intelligence. When such persons, after endeavoring hard for many, many lives to understand the supreme cause, are finally in actual knowledge of Krishna, Vasudeva, they surrender unto him. Vasudeva Savam Iti, Samahatma Sudurlabha. Thus they become great Mahatmas, perfect souls. If one is fortunate enough to understand his relationship with God, knowing that God is great or Vibhu, whereas the living entity is small, Anand, he is perfect in knowledge. The individual exists in darkness when he thinks that he is the material body and that everything is in relationship with the material body belongs to him. This is called aham mama, janasya moho yam aham mameti. This is illusion. One must give up his illusory conception and thus become fully aware of everything. So this concept that the living entity is the all in all is, in other words, living entity is God, is a false concept. We are part and parcel of the Lord, but we are not the Lord Himself. So it's um, it's something that is maintained by the false ego. The false ego does not understand itself as the servant of the Lord. The false ego makes one think that they are the Lord's. So that kind of consciousness is called it's called Avisuddha Buddhaya, unpolished or contaminated intelligence. Very important. When such persons, after endeavoring hard for many, many lives, in lives to understand the supreme cause, are finally in actual knowledge of Krishna, Vasudeva, they surrender unto him. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. Thus they become great Mahatmas, perfect souls. If one is fortunate enough to understand his relationship with God, knowing that God is great, in other words, Vibhu, whereas the living entity is small, in other words, Anu, he is perfect in knowledge. The individual exists in darkness when he thinks that he is the material, he is perfect in knowledge. The individual exists in darkness when he thinks that he is the material body and that everything in relationship with the material body belongs to him. This is called aham mama, jnanasya moha yam aham mameti. This is illusion. One must give up this illusory conception and thus become fully aware of everything. Well, a baby gradually grows up and becomes, uh, a adult. Now, does that mean that one is knowledgeable? Not necessarily, because one has to be trained by genuine, uh, what they call genuine devotees. If one is not properly trained, even though they become adults, they can still be in ignorance. So here it says, uh, both God and the living entity are fully conscious. As living entities, we are conscious of our bodily existence. Similarly, the Lord is conscious of the gigantic cosmic manifestation. This is confirmed in the Vedas. Yasmin Yo Prithvi Kantariksham Vigyaptaram Ahi Kena Vichaniyat Ekam Eva Dviti Yam Atma Jyoti Samrat Ihovacha Sa Imam Lokan Asraja Satyam Gyanam Anantam Asango Hi Ayam Purusha Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Sisyate, which means all these Vedic injunctions prove that both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the minute soul are individual. One is great, the other is small. But both of them are the cause of all causes. The corporal, or the corporally limited, the corporally limited, and the universally unlimited. We should always remember that although we are equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality, we are never equal to Him in quantity. Okay, so that is our real takeaway. We are qualitatively we are equal, but the point of, but as far as quantity goes, we are minute, and Krishna is great. So we can never emulate the Lord. We are always subordinate to the Lord. If we think I am the Lord, that means that we are an illusion. But if we think that we are the eternal servants of the Lord, then we are properly situated. So it says here, we should always remember that although we are equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality, we are never equal to Him in quantity. Persons with a small fund of intelligence, finding themselves equal in quality with God, foolishly think that they're equal in quantity. Their intelligence is called avisuddha buddhaya, unpolished or contaminated intelligence. When such persons, after endeavoring hard for many, many lives, after endeavoring hard for many, many lives to understand the supreme cause, are finally in actual knowledge of Krishna, Vasudeva. They surrender unto Him. Vasudeva Saramiti Samahatma Sudurlava. Thus they become great Mahatmas, perfect souls. Okay, so there's the problem of the false ego that identifies himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thinks that everything uh, everything is existing around him. That he is let's say, Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. There are people like that. They think they're God, and they think that they can control everyone else. If one is fortunate enough to understand his relationship with God, knowing that God is great, whereas the living entity is small, anu, He is perfect in knowledge. So there's so many people in this world. They're they have this concept that they're greater than everyone else, and they conquer nations, and but yet as they get old and eventually they die, then they realize, oh, I was so powerful, but actually it was all an illusion, and now I am going to die. So that period when one feels that I am God, uh, they falsely uh, convince themselves that they are immortal and most powerful. But gradually they get old, they get sick, and they die. And then they realize the whole thing was a hoax. I was not ever really the supreme controller. I am controlled by a greater power, meaning Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who never gets old, who never dies. Now, we also never get old and never die, but our, let's say, power is limited. Whereas Krishna never gets old and never dies, but he has unlimited power. So unless, and that's where it says here, let's see, all these Vedic injunctions prove that both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the minute soul are individual. Okay, that's a given. One is great and the other is small. But both of them are the cause of all causes, the corporally limited and the universally unlimited. Well, sometimes uh, people think that they are universally unlimited. And then as they get old and then they come close to death, then they realize that they are uh, not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We should always remember that although we are equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality, we are never equal to him in quantity. Persons with a small fund of intelligence, finding themselves equal in quality with God, foolishly think that they are equal in quantity also. Their intelligence is called Avisuddha Buddhaya, unpolished or contaminated intelligence. When such persons, after endeavoring hard for many, many lives to understand the supreme cause, are finally in actual knowledge of Krishna or Vasudeva, they surrender unto him. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlava. Thus they become great Mahatmas, great or perfect souls. If one is fortunate enough to understand his relationship with God, knowing that God is great or Vibhu, whereas living entity is small, Anu, he is perfect in knowledge. The individual exists in darkness when he thinks that he is he is the material body, and that everything in relationship with the material body belongs to him. Now, see, that's a very important statement. Actually, we're not the owner of this body. We cannot say we're the owner of the body because the body is always changing, and eventually it's going to die. So we cannot identify ourselves as this body. But everybody identifies themselves as this body. And the body goes through the 6 different stages: birth, old age, disease, and death, and so forth. So actually, we cannot say, I am this body, because someone could ask you, which body are you talking about? The one that you were a baby, or when you're 6 years old, or when you're 12 years old, etc. So we cannot say I am this body. Okay. Then what can we say? We can say that I am the minute living entity, um, eternally subordinate to the Supreme Personality of God. Okay, now that is the correct statement. We are never equal to God or Krishna, but we are part and parcel of God. So that means that uh, we have certain qualities that are the same as God, but not in the same quantity or potency. So we have to always accept the humility of being a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then we're not in an illusion. But if we think that we become God and we control people, we have so much money in the bank, and we are engaged in all kinds of uh, sensual activities, we get all puffed up. But over time, we eventually get old and sick, and we become decrepit and die. So that uh, very quick period where we think we're invincible is eventually completely defeated, and we become completely what you would call decrepit, old, sick, and eventually we die. So, therefore, we should not have this false ego of thinking, oh, my body is strongest in the world, my intelligence is the strongest in the world, everyone should be subordinate to me. And after a few years, they find out that, well, they're not actually the Supreme Lord. They are completely under the control of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, who never gets old. So, because we get old, that means that we're not God. God never gets old. God is always a young uh, person. This is what is confusing. We try to be a young person. We take, supplements, exercise, and try this way or that way to maintain our youth, but it doesn't work. We eventually become old, sick, and die. Okay. Now, if you ever go to the gym, you will see a lot of people working out, right? And they're taking different supplements and they're exercising and they're running. They have these gym, what do you call this? The gym things that, you can run. You don't get anywhere, but you run, you exercise, and then lifting weights and bathing and taking saunas and all these things to try and maintain one's youth and one's, uh, let's say, ability to remain young. But no matter how, let's say, uh, hard you try, you still get old and you get sick and you die. And there are some people that really, really do things crazy. They start taking supplements, and they think that by taking these supplements, they won't get old, or at least they'll get old very, very slowly. The whole supplement, let's say, supplement use was started with the idea that by eating uh, foods that are depleted of energy or good, let's say, uh, good vitamins and minerals, they have to supplement themselves with vitamins and minerals to make up for what is lacking in the soil of the uh, uh, the soil today. So that's where the supplements came from, with the idea that the soil is depleted of all the vitamins and minerals that are necessary for the body. Therefore, they have to supplement with different types of uh, medicines. Well, that still is not helping someone live forever. They still get old, they get sick, and they die. So this whole idea that one can make the material body immortal, which has been around since the beginning of time. So many so-called powerful people thought that they could somehow or other make the body immortal. Right? But it is not possible because the body is always subject to the laws of material nature. And the laws of material nature, in other words, will force you to get old, your body to get old, to get sick and die. No matter how many supplements you take, no matter how much you exercise and go to the gym and take all kinds of supplements and so forth. In fact, by taking a lot of supplements, you can die faster. Those supplements are not going to help you. I had a cousin, uh, sort of a distant cousin. One day, he saw me and he called me and he said, "How you doing?" I said, "Oh, okay, I'm fine." He said, "Are you taking supplements?" Right away, he said that. I said, "No, I'm not." "Oh, you're not?" "No, no, no, no. You have to do this." Then he took out this little round thing with all the times where you should take supplements. Right? I don't know where he got that from. And then he said, "Well, you have to take this at this hour, and then this one, and the other one at another hour." And uh, in other words, he was eating about, I don't know, 50 supplements in one day. And I said to him, "Well," and he was my cousin. So I said, "Well, uh, I do eat good food every day." "No, no, 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 no. You don't get all the supplements when you eat because there's depletion of the earth. Uh, we have to have supplements." So, and then they gave me a whole lecture about all the different supplements, vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, and so forth. So he made me say that I would, from this point on, take those supplements. So in order to get rid of them, I said, "Okay, I will do it." But I didn't do it. And 2 years later, he was dead, and I'm still alive. Yeah, why? Because he poisoned himself with all those supplements. You have to eat real food. You don't live on supplements. Uh, People think, I take vitamin A and vitamin B and vitamin C and this thing and that thing. That's not going to keep you healthy. It might make you feel like you're healthy, but it's not going to make you healthy. You have to eat real food, and you have to have real water, and so many simple things in life. But if you begin to artificially think that you can live forever by taking supplements, it's an illusion. And my so-called cousin who gave me a lecture on supplements, he stopped me. I met him on the street by accident, and he gave me a 1 hour lecture on supplements. The first thing he said to me is, "How are you?" I said, "I'm okay." "Are you taking your supplements?" I said, "No, not really." "Oh, no, you have to." I said, "But I eat food." "No, no, 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 no. The food is all depleted." And then he gave me a 1 hour, lecture on the necessity for taking supplements. There's so many crazy people. Okay. Have you ever met a person like that?
Yes, Maharaj. Like especially the young kids, and like during their 20s, they take a lot of protein supplements and many other
Protein supplements.
to go to the gym so that they can build more and more muscles.
Muscle.
I know few people, but they don't listen. Maharaj. I try to convey that you can take these things from other things like almonds and walnuts. You can take them,
Yeah.
soak them, and then eat. They're like more powerful
Yeah.
than your this protein powder, but not much success.
Did they hear you?
No.
Okay. So therefore, let's see, a takeaway it says here, the individual exists in darkness when he thinks that he is the material body and that everything in relationship with the material body belongs to him. This is called aham mama, janasya mahoyam aham mamati. This is illusion. One must give up this illusory conception and thus become fully aware of everything. So when one thinks in the darkness, when he thinks that he is the material body and that everything in relationship with the material body belongs to him. So you see this if you go to a gym where everyone is working out, right? And they're talking about the supplements they take. They talk about their, working out the, what do you call, um, uh, working out the time that they take to build up their muscle. And some of them have really these bodies that full of muscles, right? But they still get old and they get sick and they die. So, what is the real, let's say, thing that we have to do? Well, we have to be surrendered to Krishna, not surrendered to supplements. The supplements are not going to make us live forever, but becoming a devotee and always remembering Krishna, even up to the point of death, that will help us be immortal, not the supplements and the exercise and all that. Okay, so text 21. An expert geologist can understand where there is gold and by various processes can extract it from the gold ore. Similarly, a spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within his body, and thus, by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. However, one who is not expert and cannot understand where there is gold, a foolish person who has not cultivated spiritual knowledge cannot understand how the spirit exists within the body. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here is a very good example concerning spiritual understanding. Foolish rascals, including so-called jnanis, philosophers, and scientists, cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body because they are lacking in spiritual knowledge. The Vedas enjoin tad viganartam sagunam eva bigachet. To understand spiritual knowledge, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. Unless one has been trained in geology, one cannot detect gold in stone. Similarly, unless one has been trained by a spiritual master, he cannot understand what is spirit and what is matter. Here it is said, Yogaistad Abhi Jnana. This indicates that one who has connected himself with spiritual knowledge can understand that there is a spiritual soul within the body. However, one who is in an animalistic conception of life and has no spiritual culture cannot understand. So, to understand that there is a spiritual soul within the body is real knowledge. However, one who is in an animalistic conception of life, why did they say that? Because the animals don't understand the existence of the soul in the body. They don't have that ability, they don't have that intelligence. Therefore, yeah, they can eat, they can sleep, they can mate, and they can defend, and they also can get old and die, but they don't have knowledge that they have an eternal soul. Whereas a human being can have, although also eats, sleeps, mates, and defends, but also has the intelligence by which they can understand that they have an eternal soul, and they, from that point on, they begin to act in a civilized way to cultivate their soul existence. If one remains a animal, like and lives like an animal, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and completely ignoring God, in fact, even making fun of God, or being jealous of God, or rejecting the concept that there is God, they simply live like animals. They eat, sleep, mate, and defend, and eventually they die in ignorance. So here he says, an expert mineralogist or geologist can understand where there is gold and can then invest his money to dig there and chemically separate the gold from the ore. An expert spiritualist can understand where the soul is within matter. One who has not been trained cannot distinguish between gold and stone. Similarly, fools and rascals who have not learned from an expert spiritual master what is soul and what is matter cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body. To understand such knowledge, one must be trained in the mystic yoga system, or finally in the bhakti yoga system. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1855, Bhaktya Yamam Abhijanati. Unless one takes shelter of the bhakti yoga process, one cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita begins by teaching Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyate. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. So when he says one soul similarly passes into another body at death, well, it could be into another mundane body to go through the whole process again of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and so forth. Or it could be that one achieves transcendental knowledge and gets a spiritual body. Then the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease is solved. Thus, the first instruction is that one should understand that the soul is within the body and is transmigrating from one body to another. Okay, anybody can understand that. This is the beginning of spiritual knowledge. Any person who is not expert in understanding this science or is unwilling to understand it remains in the bodily conception of life or the animalistic conception of life, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yasyatma Uti Kunape Chidatuke Sa Eva Go Kara. That means Sa Eva Go Kara. One lives like an animal without knowledge that they have an eternal soul. Every member of the human society should clearly understand the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, for only in this way can one be spiritually elevated and automatically give up the false illusory knowledge by which one thinks, I am this body, and everything belonging to this body is mine. Aham mametu. This doggish conception should be rejected immediately. One should be prepared to understand the spirit soul and the supreme spirit, God, who who are eternally related. Thus, one may return home back to Godhead, having solved all the problems of life. So, whenever you meet an atheist, he doesn't believe that God exists. And in fact, he'll make jokes about people who believe in God, thinking that they are less intelligent. Yeah. And he is more elevated and cultured in knowledge. He doesn't believe in so-called, let's say, false narratives that there is an eternal body, there is a spiritual world, there is God. They don't believe any of that. They think that there's no God, and you only live once, and when you die, everything is over. When they find out that you will never really die, and you have an eternal soul, they get scared. They say, "What? You know, life is miserable. I don't want to have an eternal soul." Because you get old, you get sick, and then you die. They have no idea of spiritual life in which you can be immortal. Everybody has the potential of being immortal. Everybody is immortal, but due to ignorance, they go through the process of birth, death, old age, and disease over and over and over again in that cycle. But eventually, by becoming Krishna conscious, they can break themselves from that cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, and engage in eternal life in the spiritual world. So it's all about knowledge and who you associate with. So if you associate with materialistic people, you become ignorant. And if you associate with genuine devotees, you become genuinely knowledgeable and do not believe in nonsense, let's say, nonsense concepts, such as you live only once, therefore you should live very vigorously and experience all kinds of sense gratification, because when you die, there's nothing. That's what most people believe nowadays. Everything ends at death. I was talking to this one lady once, and she said, "My only prayer is that when I die, there will be nothing." I said, "Well, okay, but who do you pray to?" That doesn't mean anything. I can pray to anything. I can pray to a tree. I can pray to this. I can pray to that. But as long as when I die, there's nothing after that. She was completely stupid, but she was convinced that she was very educated. Text 22. The Lord's 8 separated material energies, the 3 modes of material nature, and the 16 transformations, the 11 senses, and the 5 gross material elements, like earth and water. Within all these, the one spiritual soul exists as the observer. Now we're getting somewhere. Therefore, all the great acharyas have concluded that the individual soul is conditioned by these material elements. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As explained in the previous verse, Shitresu Dehesu Tata Atma Yogai Adhyatma Vid Brahma Gatim Labete Labeteya. A spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within a body, and thus, by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. The intelligent person who is expert in finding the self within the body must understand the 8 external energies, which are listed in Bhagavad Gita 7.4. Bhumir apo navo vayu tam mano vidir evacha ahankara ityame pina prakritirastada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, all together. These eight comprise my separated material energies. Bhumi, earth, includes all the objects of sense perception. Rupa, form, rasa, taste, gandha, smell, sabda, sound, parsa, touch. Within the earth are the fragrance of roses, the taste of sweet fruit, and whatever else we want. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.10.4, Sarvakama Dubda Mahi, the earth, Mahi, contains all our requirements. Thus, the objects of sense perception are all present in Bhumi, of the earth. The gross material elements and subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and ahankara, false ego, constitute the total material energy. Within the total material energy are the three material modes or qualities. These qualities, sattva guna, raja guna, and tamo guna, belong not to the soul, but to the material energy. It is because of the interaction of these three material modes of nature that the five knowledge gathering senses, the five working senses, and their controller, the mind, are manifested. Then, according to these modes, the living entity gets the opportunity to perform different types of karma with different types of knowledge, thinking, feeling, and willing. Thus, the bodily machine begins to work. This has all been properly analyzed in Sankhya Yoga by the great acharyas, especially by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, in his incarnation as Devahuti Putra Kapila. So, Devahuti Putra, the son of the of Devahuti, is Kapila. This is indicated here by the word acharya. We need not follow anyone who is not an authorized acharya. Acharyavam Purusho Veda. One can understand the truth fully when he has taken shelter of an expert acharya. So an expert acharya, he only speaks on the basis of bona fide knowledge. Authorized, and then he's authorized. If he engages in speculation, he's no longer an acharya, and he's no longer a bona fide, let's say, source of knowledge. The living entity is individual, but the body is a composition of many material elements. This is proved by the fact that as soon as the living entity quits its combination of material elements, it becomes a mere conglomeration of matter. The matter is qualitatively one, and the spiritual soul is qualitatively one with the Supreme. The Supreme is one, and this individual soul is one. But the individual soul is understood to be the master of the individual combination of material energy, whereas the Supreme Lord is the controller of the total material energy. The living entity is the master of his particular body, and according to his activities, he is subjected to different types of pain and pleasure. However, although the Supreme Person, the Paramatma, is also one, he is present as an individual in all different bodies. The material energy is, in fact, divided into 24 elements. The individual soul, the owner of the individual body, is a 25th subject, and above everything is Lord Vishnu or Paramatma, the supreme controller, who is the 26th subject. When one understands all of these 26 subjects, he becomes Adhyatma-vit, an expert in understanding the distinction between matter and spirit. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 13.3, Chetra Chetra Gayor Jnanam, understanding of the Chetra, the constitution of the body, and of the individual soul and the supersoul constitutes real knowledge, real jnana, or knowledge, unless one ultimately understands that the Supreme Lord is eternally related with the individual soul. One's knowledge is imperfect. Unless one ultimately understands that the Supreme Lord is eternally related with the individual soul, one's knowledge is imperfect. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:19. So an atheist, you talk to an atheist, they say, I don't believe in God. That's nonsense. We live and then we try and live as good as we can, and when we die, there's nothing. That's their philosophy. But that's not true. There's not even one iota of that philosophy that is true. The whole thing is false. But that's what they believe, that's what they teach. What do they teach in schools? Basically, they teach, I am this body. And eventually, this body will die, and you will no longer be a person. There will no longer be an I am. No, that's not true. In spiritual knowledge, we understand that we have an eternal existence. But many people, due to ignorance, ignore the fact that they have eternal existence, and therefore they exist in very, what you would call, energetic sense gratification, thinking that when I die, there is nothing. In fact, I met this one lady once, and she said, my only prayer is that when I die, there is nothing. I said, but who do you pray to? She said, that doesn't mean anything. So she's using words that indicate that there's a God, but she doesn't believe in God. She only believes in the body. And when the body dies, that's it. Everything is over. There are a lot of people like that. A lot of people. In fact, there are more people that believe that type of nonsense than there are devotees. Bahunam janmanamante yanavamam prapadyante vasudeva savamiti samahatma sudurlava. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, meaning Krishna, knowing me, or Krishna, to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Everything material and spiritual consists of various energies of Vasudeva, meaning Krishna, to whom the individual soul, the spiritual part of the Supreme Lord, is subordinate. Upon understanding this perfect knowledge, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Samahatma Sudurlava. So surrender to the Lord. That is what you learn in Krishna consciousness. You learn that there is God and that He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we are all subordinate to Him. That is knowledge. But if we believe that there is no God, and I can become God by taking supplements and exercising and eventually attaining immortality, that's complete illusion. And there are people like that. You go to the gym, you see them. They're working out like anything. Their bodies are getting strong and they're taking their supplements and they're eating this and eating that. And they think that by doing that they might become immortal. But no, they're going to get old, they're going to get sick, and they're going to die. And the more supplements you take, the more you get old, sick, and die. Because it's like poison after a certain point. If you're not eating genuine food, you're just eating supplements, then you're poisoning your body. You're not helping yourself. Okay, I think we'll stop right there. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments?
You have brought up one good point, Maharaj. So supplements, people nowadays they're taking more and more. Even the young generation also, without being aware of the implications, they started using the supplements, not eating enough food, fresh food, and going to gym, workout to build up the muscles. So it's dangerous. So
Well, no, the whole idea is that they want to ultimately make the body immortal, or at least live a very long time. But we're not going to live more than 100 years. Very few people live more than 100 years. Some of them get maybe 105, 106. They die. So the body dies, but not the soul. But they don't believe in the soul. They believe the soul is the body. So, yeah, it's very sad. Very, very sad. And it's because of modern education. Modern education does not accept spiritual knowledge. It only accepts mundane knowledge. So if you put your child in a school, a normal school today, the child will only learn mundane things, nothing spiritual. If you put your child in a school like a Catholic school, there is some spiritual instructions being given. But even the instruction that's given in a Catholic school does not give the whole knowledge of spiritual life, because the Catholics, they believe that meat eating is not bad; it's good. They believe some things that are good, but they also believe in other things that are very bad. So they don't have the full knowledge. They're gurus. They're so-called uh, enlightened persons have not understood yet that you should not eat meat. That's one of the first things we learn as devotees. No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. Many people have not understood that because the educational system is corrupt. It's not teaching the true knowledge. Okay, we will stop there today, and our takeaway for today is the following. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Because very few people are going to come to this conclusion that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. Everything material and spiritual consists of various energies of Vasudeva, meaning Krishna, to whom the individual soul, the spiritual part of the Supreme Lord, is subordinate. So we are the individual soul, but we're still part and parcel of Krishna. Upon understanding this perfect knowledge, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality Godhead. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. So the whole concept of surrender to God is rejected by the atheists. The atheists say, what's their motto? No surrender, no God. Right? They reject the existence of God, and they reject the idea that they should surrender to a God. Therefore, that they are atheists. They don't believe in the existence of God, and they believe, however, in the body, keeping the body alive as long as possible by different strategies, working out, taking supplements, engaging in sex, this, that, thinking that these things will prolong their life for more sense gratification. Okay, thank you very much, my dear devotees. And our takeaway for today is this following. Everything material and spiritual consists of various energies of Vasudeva, Krishna, to whom the individual soul, the spiritual part of the Supreme Lord, is subordinate. Upon understanding this perfect knowledge, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. Unless we come to the point of Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha, that we should surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, we are not actually enlightened persons. We are ignorant, like an animal. And we will live even a long life, but without this knowledge, it's no different than an animal that lives a long life. It's a long life of ignorance, not of knowledge. Okay, thank you very much, my dear devotee. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? So our takeaway for today is this verse, and we should memorize this verse. Bhavanam janmanamante gyanavamam prapadyante Vasudeva sarvamantiti samahatma sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, meaning Krishna, knowing me, Krishna, to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. There's so many people in this world, very few become genuine devotees. And Bhavanam Janmanamante Gyanadharmam Prapadyante Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. After many, many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. That is our takeaway for today. And we should memorize it. Mantra. Vahanam Janmanamante Ganavamam Prapadyante Vasudeva Samamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, meaning Krishna, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Haribol.
Yeah.
So we should memorize this. Pavanam Janmanamante Ganamam Prabhadyante Vasudeva Samarniti Samahatma Sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, meaning Krishna. And who is, surrenders unto me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Hare Krishna. That is our takeaway for today. Any questions or comments? Okay, my dear devotees, please have a good day today. Chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. See, we are reading all this book of knowledge, Srimad Bhagavatam, and so many books of the Bhagavatam. On the other hand, if you simply chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day, you are also equally being educated. Even better than that is you chant Hare Krishna and you read Bhagavatam. Now you get the full enchilada, the full gamut of knowledge. Okay, we'll stop right there unless there's some questions or comments. If not, thank you very much. Have a good day today and chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram,
Hare Hare.
And our takeaway from today is the following. Pavanam Janmanamante Ganavamam Prabhadyante Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sadurlabha. After many, many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, meaning Krishna, knowing me, Krishna, to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.